I've always found solace in the great outdoors. There's something about the whispering winds through the trees, the rustle of leaves underfoot, and the sheer majesty of untouched nature that calls to me. It's my escape, my sanctuary. I've been on countless hiking and camping trips, but this time, I decided to venture somewhere new, somewhere a bit more remote. A trail leading to a canyon I'd heard about from a fellow hiker. It was supposed to be a challenging hike, with the reward of a breathtaking view at the top of the canyon where I planned to camp for the night. The trail wasn't well known, which suited me just fine. The fewer people, the better. I loaded up my backpack with all the essentials: tent, food, water, and my trusty knife, and set out early in the morning. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden hue over the landscape, promising a perfect day ahead. The trailhead was easy enough to find, but as soon as I stepped onto it, I felt a slight unease, a feeling I brushed off as just excitement or maybe even the remnants of sleep. The hike itself was invigorating. The path wound through dense forests, with towering pines and ancient oaks flanking me on either side. Occasionally, I'd catch a glimpse of wildlife: deer darting through the underbrush, birds chirping high above. The air was crisp and clean, filling my lungs with every deep breath. As the hours passed and the sun climbed higher in the sky, I reached the base of the canyon. It loomed ahead, a steep climb that would take a good hour or so to ascend, but I was ready for it. I took a moment to rest, drink some water, and began the climb. The canyon was everything I'd hoped it would be: rugged, majestic, and utterly silent. As I reached the top, I was greeted with a panoramic view that took my breath away. The vast expanse of wilderness stretched out below me. The trees looked like tiny green dots from this height. The river that carved the canyon glistened far below, a silver ribbon winding its way through the earth. I set up my camp near the edge, far enough to be safe, but close enough to enjoy the view. My tent went up quickly, and I gathered some wood for a small fire. The afternoon passed in peaceful solitude. I cooked my dinner over the fire, enjoying the simple pleasure of food cooked outdoors. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a deep contentment. This is why I love these trips: the sheer beauty of nature and the quiet that comes with it. But as the last light of day faded and darkness began to settle, that initial unease returned. It was subtle at first, a prickle at the back of my neck, a sense that I was being watched. I shrugged it off, telling myself it was just the isolation playing tricks on my mind. After all, I was miles from the nearest town and I hadn't seen another soul all day. The first oddity occurred as I was finishing my dinner. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw movement, a shadow flickering just at the edge of my vision. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there, just the darkness creeping in, the trees standing sentinel in the distance. I told myself it was nothing, just a trick of the firelight, or maybe a bird or animal moving through the trees. But as the night deepened, the strange occurrences became harder to ignore. I began to hear sounds, soft at first, almost imperceptible: a rustle in the bushes, a snap of a twig. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or small animals foraging in the night, but the sounds grew more distinct, more unsettling. There were whispers, low, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from all around me. They were too quiet to make out any words, but the tone was unmistakably eerie, like someone or something was talking just beyond my campsite. I stood up, scanning the area with my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, but I saw nothing, just the quiet wilderness seemingly undisturbed. Yet the feeling of being watched grew stronger, an oppressive weight pressing down on me. I tried to shake it off to convince myself it was just my imagination, but I couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. I decided to get some rest, hoping that sleep would bring some clarity and chase away these irrational fears. I crawled into my tent, zipped it up tight, and lay down in my sleeping bag, listening to the sounds of the night. But sleep wouldn't come. The whispers continued growing louder, closer. They seemed to be right outside my tent now, circling around me, my heart pounding in my chest, every muscle tense as I strained to hear, to understand what was being said. The voices were disjointed, nonsensical, but filled with a malevolent intent that chilled me to the bone. Then, just as suddenly as they began, the whispers stopped. Silence fell over the canyon, a silence so complete it was deafening. I lay there, holding my breath, listening, waiting for something, anything to happen, but nothing did. After what felt like an eternity, I slowly relaxed, telling myself it was over, that I just let my imagination run wild. But as I started to drift off, there was a sound, a low, guttural growl, unlike anything I'd ever heard before. It wasn't an animal. It was something else, something unnatural. My blood ran cold, and I shot up, grabbing my knife and my flashlight. I fumbled with the zipper of my tent, my hands shaking, finally wrenching it open. I burst out of my tent, my flashlight beam sweeping over the campsite, but there was nothing there. The growl was gone, replaced once again by the eerie silence. I stood there, panting, knife in hand, scanning into the darkness, but whatever had made that sound was gone, or maybe it had never been there at all. That was the breaking point. I wasn't staying here another minute. I quickly packed up my gear, hands still trembling, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds, half expecting to see something emerge from the shadows, but nothing came. With my pack hastily thrown together, I set off down the trail, leaving the campsite behind. The descent was steep, the path treacherous in the dark, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get out of here, to put as much distance between me, myself, and whatever was in that canyon. As I hurried down the trail, the whispers returned, louder now, more insistent. They seemed to follow me, to echo through the canyon walls, surrounding me on all sides. I could hear footsteps behind me, the crunch of gravel and twigs, but every time I turned around, there was nothing there, just the empty trail stretching out behind me. The descent that had taken me an hour earlier now felt like it would never end. My legs burned from the effort, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but I couldn't stop. The whispers were driving me forward, pushing me to move faster, to escape whatever unseen force was pushing me. Then, just as I thought I couldn't go any further, I saw it, the trailhead, the spot where I'd begun my hike. My car was just beyond it, parked at the edge of the forest. Relief flooded through me, but it was quickly replaced by terror as I heard that growl again, closer this time, right behind me. I ran, sprinting the last few yards to my car, practically throwing myself inside. I slammed the door shut, locking it as if that flimsy barrier would protect me from whatever that was out there. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys, finally getting the engine to roar to life. I didn't look back as I peeled out of there, the gravel spitting out from under my tires. The whispers faded into the distance, drowned out by the sound of the engine, but the fear remained, gnawing at me, refusing to let go. It wasn't till I was miles away, back on the main road, that I finally began to calm down, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from my system. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something chasing after me, but the road behind me was empty. I didn't know what I encountered in that canyon, whether it was just my imagination, The isolation playing tricks on me, or something else, something beyond explanation. But whatever it was, I knew one thing for sure: I was never going back. The wilderness that had once been my refuge now held a darkness I couldn't ignore, a darkness that whispered in the night and followed me down that canyon trail. And as much as I loved the outdoors, I wasn't willing to risk hearing those whispers again.